Sema umekataliwa. Sema mmekataliwa. Hatuwezi kumamake.
All right, Gen Z protests shut down cities in historic election in Tanzania. Biya wins again and a Sudan city falls. Welcome to This Week in Africa, a weekly live stream where we break down the news of the day across the continent. Let's start with introductions. I'll turn it over to my co-host and I'll do my introduction immediately following.
Hi, everyone. My name is Gloria Ayo. I am the creator and host of The African Story, and definitely happy to be here, as always.
Awesome. Always happy to have you. I am Joe Hatagwa, the founder of Authentic African and Authentic African Media. Our goal is to help people do one of three things: visit, move, or invest in the continent of Africa. Also, while educating on what's happening on the continent as well as the changes, ever-changing landscape across the 54 countries. And the goal is to bridge the gap between those living on the continent and those living in the diaspora. So as I opened today, we're talking about Tanzania's youth, which has shut down major cities in massive protests against the disputed elections and inequality. This is the Gen Z revolution spreading across Africa. As you guys have noticed, that's been a theme over the last couple of months, and we are going to break down each and every story. So, as I said, before we get into the next video, which gives you a little bit more context as to what's been happening in Tanzania, let me give you a little bit of insight into the protests. So, Gen Z-led protests have swept across Tanzania, as I mentioned, shutting down major cities and exposing deep anger over disputed local elections and widening inequality. In Dar es Salaam, a city which, if you follow my channel, you saw that I visited, the government offices and police posts were set on fire, and protesters clashed with security forces. Authorities imposed a curfew in the capital and ordered public servants and students to stay home. Internet access was cut nationwide as police fired live ammunition and tear gas at crowds building barricades, and those crowds also were burning buses. Footage from some people's phones show armed men in plain clothes shooting at protesters. At least 2 people, including a civilian and a police officer, have experienced loss of life, and there are more, I'm sure, to come in the coming days. Now, before we talk more about the protest itself, I do want to talk a little bit more about the political election itself and the climate there, and we'll get into a video first, and then we'll have some commentary on the other side. So, yesterday, October 29th, Wednesday, October 29th, Tanzanians head to the polls seeking a first direct mandate for the president, the first female president of Tanzania, following her taking over for the former president after an untimely demise. But the election comes under a cloud of fear, with widespread reports of abductions, arrests, and unalivings of opposition members. Major opposition leaders had been barred or jailed, leaving a field largely uncontested for Hassan and her ruling CCM party. Human rights groups accuses her government of intensifying the same repressive tactics seen under previous administrations. Early voting in Zanzibar had also raised concerns over irregularities, deepening tensions ahead of what became an highly contested election. So with that, let's go to this video, and then we will have some commentary on the other side.
And as Cameroon faces post-poll tensions, another African nation is bracing for controversial general elections. Tanzania will head to the polls tomorrow. President Samia Suluhu Hassan is set to face her first direct election. Tanzania's first female president came to power in 2021 after the death of her predecessor. But her win is all but guaranteed, as Tanzania's polls appear to be an opposition-less contest. Most rival candidates have been barred or jailed ahead of the vote. This includes main opposition leader Tundu Lissu, who is currently on trial for treason. His party, Chadema, along with the third largest party, ACT Wazalendo, has also been banned. Some 17 candidates have been cleared to run, all from smaller, less influential parties, making President Hassan's path to re-election seemingly easy. In the lead up to the vote, opposition, politicians and rights groups have accused the government of abductions and arrests of political opponents. Early voting has begun in Zanzibar. It's a semi-autonomous archipelago where President Hassan originally hails from. The main opposition there has accused authorities of registering deceased individuals to vote, describing it as early stealing.
All right, I'll leave it there. Let's get back to some commentary. So again, that video was before the election. It just gave you a little bit of background and context for what has been happening. But Gloria, your thoughts on what's been happening leading up to the election, which we've spoken about previously, and then the post-election protests by these Gen Z folks.
Yes. I can't remember which episode it was. You know, we've been talking about Samia Hassan for a while on this show. And somebody said, what a girl boss. Somebody actually wrote, somebody who was listening to us talked about how, because I've been talking about Tundu Lissu for years. Tundu Lissu is the main, is one of the main opposition people as far as Samia Hassan's regime is concerned. And somebody actually wrote that the reason he was imprisoned was because he was, it was being backed by the West to try to take down the government. Bro, please stop. Okay, let's just stop that right now. What is going on in Tanzania is extremely disappointing. The Gen Z-led protests in major cities in Tanzania is really because of what Hassan's government is doing, which is suppressing opposition, simple and plain. In addition to her government not doing that which it promised to do. I mean, now you have centers in Dar es Salaam being paralyzed. What is that doing for the economy in the long run? And then to go as far as having a nationwide internet disruption. Just last week, and I've said this repeatedly, my huge concern, my number one concern when I see things like this happening is how it becomes popular throughout the continent. It's not today. This isn't the first time we've heard of internet being disrupted because people have chosen to oppose you. The solution is for you to just simply do the work for which you were appointed. Just perform. You wouldn't have people feeling, having the need to oppose your government. I'm really disappointed that President Hassan has chosen to create a climate of fear and repression. How do you ban main opposition leaders? Again, Tundu Lissu is still being detained on serious charges. The other major challenger, Mpina, has been disqualified on technical grounds. So clearly, this leaves the incumbent, Samia Hassan, largely unchallenged by any candidates with any name or recognition, or even the resources to mount some kind of competitive campaign. So you know exactly what you're doing. There are 16 other candidates, but they're from minor parties. There's hardly any political footprint. So basically, this election is more like a coronation. You might as well say, welcome, Your Majesty, because it's one party. In addition to her suppressing opposition or any form of dissent, there's economic inequality. Tanzania has a large youthful population, but they're facing high unemployment, and they're watching the political elite enriching themselves through corruption. But you have public services that you've abandoned. The economic prospects are stagnated. So this is basically the youth rejecting an old system that they feel has abandoned their generation. But for your immediate response to be so extreme, you're shutting down the internet, you're deploying the military. It just shows that Hassan has zero tolerance for any form of organized dissent, and she's determined to control the narrative. She's determined to suppress any civil society mobilization. As long as you're challenging her legitimacy, she's going to suppress you. And there are reports, which isn't surprising, of police using force against these protesters, which has resulted in casualties. Hassan, there were hopes before you came in. After yet another hardline president passed on, there was hope that you would at least, create these reforms. And you haven't. You've just been there, and you've actually been a bully. That's the best way to describe it. Tanzania has a history of students and youth protesting. So this isn't the first time. I mean, it's happened in 1966. But this particular movement, this current Gen Z movement, is different. It's decentralized, it's nonpartisan, it's highly reliant on digital platforms. You think about Kenya, you think about Madagascar. So it's a different vibe when it involves a digital native generation. They're fearless and they're challenging you. And this party has actually been in power since the independence. Right. So it is time for you to pack up and leave.
Yeah, I agree 100%. I mean, there's a couple of things that I think about when I look at this. I mean, it seems like you have a token, right? The idea of having a woman almost made it seem like they were being progressive, right?
Right.
However, they're employing the same tactics that have been the reason for the protest prior to her taking over the presidency and the previous, president that was in office. A couple of things that that you mentioned, right? One, this is a digital first group of folks who understand what's actually happening, right? You can no longer hide it from them. So they use the tactic of turning off all access to the internet. And so they use traditional tactics of bullying people, putting people in jail, and suppressing the vote. And then they're using additional new digital tactics to keep people from being able to use their phones and the internet to report what's happening on the ground. And it really, really is unfortunate because, as we mentioned, there are 2 women presidents on the continent. Many people have been championing this move to a progressive change. The 2 of them have met previously, right? And so, but it seems like they're on opposite ends of the spectrum in terms of how they're ruling their countries, at least from what we've seen so far. And so it's unfortunate, and I'm really disheartened by what I'm seeing. I went to Tanzania in 2023. And while I was there, I got a chance to meet some folks and ask them about their thoughts on the new president. And many of them said what many people say, it's more of the same. Yeah, it's a woman, but she's just going to be like everyone else who's been in office before. I don't think she's going to be more progressive or different because it's the same party that's been in power, like almost a pseudo dictatorship, right? With the same tactics they've always been using. So they weren't surprised. I would imagine they wouldn't be surprised at this outcome. So there's a comment you put up on the screen. If Zelensky can ban opposition in Ukraine and be considered a great Democrat by Western countries, why can't Tanzania operate this way, given the standards set by so-called liberal democracies? Yeah, I don't know. I don't know why that has anything to do with this particular conversation, because I think what you're talking about is the U.S. support of Ukraine. The U.S. is not supporting or not supporting Tanzania. They don't care. There's no direct correlation between what's happening in Tanzania and any major mineral exports to the United States or others. So the United States is not involved in this conversation in Tanzania. We are bringing it to light because we think it's important to hold our African leaders to accord and to a higher standard than what they've been operating at. Many of them have been operating. So yeah, Ukraine has nothing to do with this. Ukraine is nowhere near Africa. Now they are sending grains and had been sending grains to the continent of Africa, and now Russia has been as well. So in that sense, they're a trade partner for many countries on the continent. But this specific situation with what Zelensky may or may not have been doing in Ukraine has nothing to do with what we're talking about here. We're not comparing Africa to other places. We are holding Africa to the standard it needs to be held to see it get back to its rightful place on the world stage. I don't know if you have any additional thoughts on that, Gloria.
I completely agree. Okay, he added, sorry, a little off topic. I was just pointing out the bad example that the US and Europe have set that let abuses like Tanzania become more commonplace. And see, at the end of the day, if it's wrong, it's just wrong. But as far as the African context is concerned, as Joe has pointed out, we're going to hold our leaders accountable no matter what. We sometimes, I don't like to just throw the baby away with the bath water. I like to look at the good side, the positives, of government in power. But there are certain things that are just not negotiable, and that is you clamping down on opposition. For a democracy to thrive, there has to be opposition. There has to be an ecosystem of opposition, because that's how you get feedback. You can't just be so authoritarian to where you think that everything you say has to be, everybody has to abide by that. And if we're claiming to be adopting a democracy, let's know we're in a democracy. If you want it to be a monarchy, if she wants it to be a monarchy, then let's know it's a monarchy, and we say, hey, Your Majesty, I guess we're in England or something. But it's not a monarchy. We're in Africa. And yeah, we have some monarchies in certain parts of Africa, but as long as you have chosen to adopt a democracy, then you have to abide by the Constitution. You cannot be bigger than the Constitution.
Absolutely. Yeah, you said it. So with that, let's move on to another story that feels like another leader who is a king almost. Paul Biya himself, the man himself, 92-year-old Paul Biya. You might remember him from flatulence on stage at a gathering of world leaders, where he was unclear where he was. The gases were moving, and it went very viral on many occasions. I think we've even discussed it here. He's now extending his 41-year rule. So, because he just won another election, the country's top court actually confirmed his victory, extending his rule beyond 4 decades. So he has been ruling as long as I've been alive. Just for all of you who want to just think about that a little bit. I was born in 1984, right? So just keep that in mind, how long Paul Biya has been in office. So there have been protests, and they're rejecting, obviously the opposition leaders are rejecting the results, and many of the people are rejecting the results. So we'll play this video and we'll have some commentary on the other side.
The country's top court has declared 92-year-old Paul Biya the winner, extending his more than 4 decades in power. This in a country where anger and frustration over his leadership continues to mount. You see, the youth are out to reclaim their votes that were stolen. I agree with them. We can clearly see that Issa Chiroma Bakari won the election, but the government denies that. Frankly, people are not happy, and they're right, because we have been suffering for 43 years. It's not going well. Children are suffering. Educated youth have no jobs. We can't eat in Cameroon. We can't get treatments. We are fed up. Protests erupted in mid-October. Security forces have clashed with demonstrators in several cities, including Yaoundé. Dozens of people have been shot and hundreds arrested as opposition supporters demand credible election results.
Coming up with ideas, filming.
Sorry about that. So, your thoughts, please.
I like this comment. At 92 years old, Biya does have more experience than other candidates. The lady who just spoke, talking about why they are fighting, is actually a contradiction of what you just wrote. you know, we don't feel the experience. I don't know about you, Joe, but I haven't necessarily seen Cameroon being this super thriving country. You know, nobody's talking about Cameroon as far as progress is concerned. So yeah, Biya needs to leave already. Joe talked about his, what he did on stage. That is that is proof that this man needs to just quietly enjoy your retirement. You've worked for so many years, bro. It's time for you to go. If we're talking about, see, if we're going to do a comparison, let's find another leader on the continent. I'm going to go to Rwanda and use Paul Kagame. Not necessarily a fan of some of his policies and him just being in power for so long. But the people of Rwanda, it seems, now there clearly some, I've heard of some PR going on with that, but the people of Rwanda aren't feeling the need to come out and protest because, okay, he's been in power for so long, but he's at least meeting some of their basic needs. That's not what's going on with some of these leaders who hold on to power. And if you, as a president, or as a leader, feel that you're the only one who can do it, and that's why you hold on, then you have actually failed as a leader, because it means that you have not empowered other people. You have not been such a great example that there are other people who are able to say, you know what, I can also be president, and let me continue from where you stopped. So there's no excuse for any leader being in power for so long. Again, you cannot be more powerful than the Constitution. You don't have the power to decide. We're not in North Korea. Cameroon is an African country that is supposed to be led by a democracy. These men come in, they claim to want to do, Joe, you talked about this last week, how before you come in, you're so happy and so excited. And that's why I like Bobby Wine of Uganda, the main opposition. The main opposition leader. I like that Bobby Wine is keeping it real. I've heard him actually say that he also has that concern. He does not want to come in and get swayed, carried away, and then become authoritarian, the same thing that you claim to fight. Mm-hmm. So yeah, it's time for Biya to go. I stand with the people of Cameroon. I stand with the people of Tanzania. I stand with the people of Madagascar. It's people first. People first. These people are there to serve, not rule them with this high-handedness they've been doing for so many years.
Yeah, you said it. I will say I was in an Uber over the weekend at my high school homecoming, and the driver was from Cameroon. And I asked him his thoughts on Paul Biya, and he, of course, remembers that viral moment that I referenced a little earlier. And he said the same thing the woman in this video said. He said, he went to college there, and there was no work for him, and so he felt like he had to escape. He loves his country, and he wishes he could stay in Cameroon, but he had to come to America for a better life because he didn't see a better life for himself in Cameroon. And what he said was he can't understand how someone at that age could continue to stay in power. I don't know how many of you who are watching know people over the age of 85, right? They tend to talk about this thing called senior moments, right? Where just their basic memory can tend to fail them, right? Just basic things that you're used to. Even as healthy as you possibly can be, you are going to have some basic failures because Father Time is undefeated, right? And that's just how it works. And so, yes, I can understand, wanting to stay in power to continue a process and continue to build on what you've been doing. If in fact, you are progressing the country forward, but you do need to have a succession plan, as you mentioned, Gloria, because as there always is a minimum age to become president, there should be a maximum age to stay president. I don't believe in ageism at all. I think that all people demand and should have respect, but I don't think that all people should be operating heavy machinery and or ruling over large swaths of land at a certain age. It's just not helpful. I myself have worked at a nursing home, and even some of the most brilliant people, they don't know when they're having cognitive decline. I actually, when I was in high school, I was part of a medical study, and we were trying to help people figure out if they knew that they were having cognitive decline, and they did not know it. They don't notice it. Sometimes they notice they forget things, they'll just say, I'm getting old, but not everyone is fully aware of how far they've declined. And, you know, that video that I referenced, and you guys can go back and watch it, is I think 3 or 4 years old. And he already didn't know where he was. He didn't even know who he was addressing. He didn't even have the ability to read the words on the paper that they gave him. On top of that, he could not control his flatulence.
You can't get over that.
I can't. If you need to Google it, Google it. But I'm not going to say the crass word for it because this is a news live stream. But just check it out. Read it. You know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I mean, look, I would really like to see him out of power. Obviously, the country is not benefiting from him being in power. And on top of that, I think he just doesn't have the ability to be able to move the country in the direction it needs to go in. You know, it's just unfortunate, especially because I'm aware of how the country's gotten its independence. You know, being involved in a short film that was about the life of Rudolf Mangabell and what he did to help fight the Germans and, you know, to help get Cameroon its independence, to see how far it slid. You know, it's really unfortunate. So with that, we'll move on to the next story because we don't want to spend too much time on that, because this other story is a very important one that needs to be discussed. And this is the story of Sudan. So you guys might remember, and this is just south of Egypt, if you guys are wondering where Sudan is. Sudan and South Sudan broke off as different countries. Each are having their own internal disputes. Even though they had a civil war that broke off the two countries, they also now are having internal disputes in each area. So Sudan's civil war has entered a new and dangerous phase. Paramilitary rapid support forces, or the RSF, have seized control over El Fasher, the last Sudanese army stronghold in Western Darfur. So if you ever heard the name Darfur, this was a place of a lot of political it's a lot of fighting in the previous years. So after 18 months of siege, the city has fallen, leaving hundreds of thousands trapped amid bombardment, starvation, and chaos. The RSF claims this victory marks a quote-unquote turning point. Meanwhile, UN officials warn of a terrifying situation brewing, with thousands of civilians including children, facing imminent danger. And I will say, one of the accusations out there is that the UAE is funding the RSF. So, you know, that's just something to keep in mind when all of us who are so excited to go to Dubai, that is one of the Emirates, right? These are the United Arab Emirates, Dubai, Abu Dhabi. Those are two of those Emirates, right? And so if you guys have ever heard of the UAE, or you think Dubai is, you know, that you're interested in Dubai, you know, the conversation right now is that the UAE is sponsoring this paramilitary group. That is what's been said and reported publicly. I just want you guys to all be aware of that reporting. With that, we will watch this video and have some commentary on the other side.
Moving on now to Sudan, where the paramilitary rapid support forces, or the RSF, appear to have taken control of El Fasher, a key city which had been the final stronghold for the Sudanese army in the Western Darfur region. The RSF released a video cheering its takeover. On Sunday, the RSF first announced the seizure of the army headquarters within the besieged city. Later, the governor of Darfur region confirmed that rapid support forces now control the city.
The Sudanese people's right is in our hands, and we are now inside the 6th Infantry Division.
The paramilitary group have encircled the city for around 18 months, as they have fought with the Sudanese army alongside other rebels and local fighters. El Fasher has been under heavy bombardment during that time, with drone and artillery attacks. Meanwhile, the siege has led to starvation and suffering in the city, with 250,000 people still under fire. The encirclement has also made it difficult for the Sudanese army to resupply and reinforce its soldiers.
I will leave it there. If you want to watch the rest of the video, the link is in the description. 250,000 people. Gloria, your thoughts on...
Man. Oh my gosh. There's a video that that Sovereign Media added me to right before we came on air. I sent that video to you just now, Joe. Yeah. You see a woman, there's a video, some of you might have seen. I actually saw the video even before I got added to it as a collaborator, but you see a mother who has been so traumatized. You can't explain the trauma.
Yeah.
Just completely broke my heart just watching that.
She's hearing bombs, right?
Huh?
You could tell she's hearing bombs. Should I play the video?
Yeah, yeah, you can play it. I think it's important that we play it, if you don't mind.
Oh, sorry. Let me put it on screen. Let me put it on screen so you guys can see it. So this is the video that Gloria is referencing. So what you can't hear in this video because of the music is she hears the bullets and she's trembling in fear as she is making that's what's happening. That's why she's doing that all the time, because she can hear the bullets, and that's why she has her children surrounding her. But this is what people have been dealing with in Sudan over the last 18 months, as mentioned in this video. So yeah, please, Gloria, as you were.
Yeah. Okay, thank you, Joe. So the RSF, for those who might be wondering why they're so powerful, they actually directly descended from the Arab Janjaweed militias that have carried out ethnically motivated atrocities in Darfur. I mean, as far back as the 2000s under the former regime. Now, the current mass unalivings that's happening, and clearly this targeted ethnic violence against non-Arab communities, remind you of the 2003 genocide, which actually unalived hundreds of thousands of Sudanese people. Now, why is Fasher so significant? Taking over Fasher, people have actually warned that this might happen. And the main reason is because we saw what happened when the RSF took over the capital of West Darfur in 2023, when this whole drama started, where up to 15,000, mostly non-Arab civilians were unalived. What is happening right now is sadly confirming this horrific historical pattern. So what capturing Fasher means is that the RSF now controls all 5 state capitals of Darfur. This is basically a step towards what I've predicted, Joe. I said that what happened in Libya might just again happen in Sudan, a potential partition where the RSF is leading one part, the army is leading the other. But the most important conversation, the most critical conversation, is the silence of the international community. It's their failure to act. I did a research yesterday. Sudan is not nearly discussed as much as what is happening in Gaza and Ukraine have been discussed. Sudan is not getting the attention it deserves. That's why this thing keeps escalating. The UN Security Council is not doing anything. And they might say, oh, it's because of the rivalries and you cannot abandon these people more than you already have. Why is the world so silent as it relates to Sudan? And this is why, Joe, I keep accepting these collaborations. We can all be mindful of what we post because we don't want to put out violence or, offend people. But we have to do it. We saw what was happening in Gaza because people were posting. So why shouldn't we post about what's going on in Sudan? Why shouldn't we post about what's going on in Congo? The world cannot keep being silent. So I'm putting it out there. It's gory on my page, seemingly, and that's why I say viewer discretion. But it's important that we put these videos out there. Thank you, Joe.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, I mean, look, and you know, I agree 100% with everything you just said, and I think it does need to be shared. I mean, I share a lot of these, you know, I accept a lot of these collaborations, and I actually reached out to the folks who posted this to ask if they can add me as a collaborator on future posts like this. You know, as you said, what has been happening in Gaza for the last 2 years has only been able to get international attention because of so many people reposting it and talking about it. And so, although, you know, we want to help Africa get back to its rightful place on the world stage, we do have to talk about these issues that are happening on the continent. The more people are aware, the more that can be done. You know, you'll see people say, pray for Sudan, pray for Gaza. But when we know what's happening in Gaza. When somebody says pray for Gaza, you have no idea what's happening in Sudan when people say pray for Sudan. So that is why we report on these topics. That is why we continue to post them, because it's very, very important for you all to understand what is happening there. And this RSF group is brutal in their process. You know, we've talked about coups. We've talked about military takeovers. And we've talked about how in some cases we have championed them. Now, what we've also said is be cautious how much you champion a military takeover, because not all military groups that are taking over are the people that you want in power, or how some of them are taking over is to great peril of the country that they are taking over. You can see Fasher, sorry, how the buildings were bullet ridden. Many of them were half there, right, because of the drone strikes and because of all of those firearms, those, you know, those high ammunition firearms. You know, that is not stuff that just comes from within the country, right? That has to come from somewhere, right? And so, and these people are very much highly funded, right? They were able to beat the actual military. The military of Sudan was not able to stop them, right? And they obviously came in and have caused all of this, you know, this famine and what's happening there. You know, it's tough because, you know, obviously the government that's in place hasn't been doing enough to help to fix the country. But, you know, this paramilitary group is not one that, you know, necessarily is operating in ways that we can support either, right? And so it's all bad, and we do hope that at some point they can come to some sort of peace agreement and coexist somehow, some way, even after all of this loss of life and bloodshed. So it's really terrible, but we want to make sure we tell you about it, and we will keep you abreast of these stories as they continue to evolve over time. With that, let's move on to the next story. So as you guys might remember, we did report on Madagascar's president and the protests that were happening in Madagascar. So 10 days after Madagascar's military takeover, the ousted president has been stripped of his nationality. The new government revoked his citizenship, citing laws that bar dual nationality after it emerged he had secretly obtained French citizenship in 2014. So we will play this video and have some commentary on the other side.
Andry Rajoelina, who was impeached after fleeing the island nation amid massive anti-government protests, has now been stripped of his Malagasy nationality by the new military government. The decree means he will no longer be eligible to contest future elections. The newly appointed Prime Minister signed the order. As per the decree, Rajoelina's Malagasy nationality was revoked because he had acquired French nationality in 2014. The order cites laws stating that any Malagasy who voluntarily obtains a foreign nationality automatically loses their citizenship. Rajoelina's French nationality sparked a major scandal when it was revealed ahead of the November 2023 elections, nearly 10 years after he had obtained it. The revelation prompted calls for his disqualification. But he went on to win the contested polls, which were boycotted by opposition parties. The 51-year-old politician fled Madagascar at the height of youth-led protests that swept through several cities. The demonstrations, which erupted over water and power cuts, spiraled into a wider campaign against the government. It also triggered a harsh crackdown by security forces that left 22 people dead and more than 100 injured, according to the United Nations. Andry Rajoelina, who...
All right, Gloria, your thoughts. I'll be right back. I'm going to turn it over to you. I'll be right back. Just give me 1 minute. I'll be right back.
Okay. So let's talk about the Malagasy Nationality Code. This code basically stipulates that any Malagasy citizen who voluntarily acquires a foreign nationality will automatically lose their Malagasy citizenship. Now, Rajoelina acquired French nationality back in 2014, and his reason, the excuse or the explanation that he gave was because he was trying to make arrangements for his children who were studying in France. But this fact was actually revealed nearly a decade later. So what the regime, the new regime, is doing is they're using the letter of the law to declare that Rajoelina forfeited his Malagasy citizenship at that time. Obviously, the main purpose here is to ensure that Rajoelina cannot contest any future elections. That's what it boils down to. Under the Constitution, the office of the president is generally reserved for Malagasy citizens. So by officially stripping Rajoelina of his Malagasy citizenship, and we know he's been ousted, the youth have rejected him, he's definitely not going to be running for president ever. That's precisely what this means. And I mean, I guess the guy has French citizenship, so hey, Rajoelina, at least you're a citizen of some country. However, the reason, and this is part of why this has been extremely controversial, is like, where's your loyalty? Where does your loyalty lie? What's your identity at this point? And you're basically amplifying the sense of betrayal, because we know about the colonial powers. You're basically prioritizing your ties to France over your own nation. So enjoy your French citizenship. Oui, oui, mon chéri. That's like all I know in French, so thank you.
Well, yeah, I mean, look, I think, you know, I guess it gives him the opportunity to run away and be somewhere else after he's been ousted. But, you know, I think the biggest challenge I have with this is what I find is that people on the continent who are meant to improve and to move the continent forward tend to spend their time, their retirement, and the money they take from the continent and other places, right? The reason why he got French citizenship is obviously so that he can spend his time there and take the money that has been accused of being stolen from the country, right? To go there, right? And so, you know, I think that it's really important that our leaders stay in our countries, improve our systems. And I really would love to see a world where our African leaders are required to use the hospitals at the very least in the country in which they are ruling, and not be allowed to take vacations outside the country, only to leave the country for official duties. Because I think that if they were to do that and really see the challenges day to day in person and be impacted by them personally, I think that would be where they would make those changes. Until then, you have situations like this. And I get that they revoked his citizenship because at the end of the day, he hasn't been acting like a Madagascar citizen since, since being in power and you know, and prior to that, apparently. So I think it's interesting. We will just continue to follow the story. All right, so moving on to the next story. this one's another one that's tough. You know, Morocco also had protests recently, right? The Gen Z protests, Madagascar, Morocco, right? We've been talking about these protests over the last few weeks. And more than 1,500 prosecutions have happened after these Gen Z protests. So local NGOs said that at least that many people participating in the widespread protests in Morocco that were demanding better healthcare, better education, and an end to corruption were actually facing prosecution by authorities. The protests had lasted for a month, and now 1,500 of them are facing prosecution. This is a problem. We're going to play a video and have some commentary on the other side.
For 1 month already, young Moroccans have been taking to the street to protest against rising costs for education, healthcare, and the authoritarian government in the country. Known as Gen Z 212, the movement has been organizing peaceful and widespread protests across Morocco in order to put pressure on the authorities. A local NGO said before the weekend that the protests have resulted in 1,500 prosecutions of people who participated. An estimated 1,000 individuals are currently detained. Those facing prosecutions are reportedly accused of having committed a variety of acts, ranging from destruction of public property to organizing unauthorized protests or violence against security forces. Some protesters have already faced trial. The court of Agadir has notably sentenced 39 individuals to prison sentences ranging from 6 to 15 years. In recent days, the protests have become less frequent. The Moroccan king announced on 10th of October that social reforms would be sped up, and the government has pledged to make an effort on the 2026 budget to improve healthcare and education.
Imagine bringing your side project to life.
Sorry, I couldn't find my mouse. So your thoughts, Lauren, on that story?
We like to hear the adverts. It's okay. What the Moroccan government is doing is clearly, trying to neutralize the people of Morocco politically and financially. And this is so that they can prevent or send some sort of warning to anybody who thinks they can challenge the government in the future. Reports actually indicate that over 2,400 people face prosecution, and about 1,400 or 1,500 people are already in detention. These are severe charges. You're talking rebellion as part of a group. They've been accused of assaulting law enforcement officers. They've been accused of an incitement to commit crimes. So these sorts of charges actually carry very heavy sentences. Courts in some regions have already handed down prison terms ranging from 6 to 15 years to dozens of convicted protesters, including minors. When the government talks about, or the monarchy talks about, reforms, I mean, we've heard that story before. In 2011, the response to the Arab Spring that was going on, because Morocco also experienced those protests during the Arab Spring wave, the monarchy was able to survive because it enacted limited constitutional reforms and it made some concessions. So we know the pattern. When there are major demonstrations that are simply demanding systemic change, you harass the people because of the judiciary. You weaponize the judiciary to harass the people. You restrict the freedom of assembly, the freedom of expression. And then you want to console them with some sort of promise to do some reform in 2026. I stand with the people of Morocco. I am so sorry that you're having to deal with this, but we stand with you. No matter what happens, you have expressed yourselves. You have stood for that which is yours. It's not a privilege. This is actually your right. You have done nothing wrong. All you're asking for is for the system to be fair to you, and obviously you're not only fighting you're fighting for the future. So thank you, Moroccans. We stand with you. Well, I stand with you. I'm sure Joe does too.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, anybody who wants to see an improvement of their country, for sure. I think what you're seeing in these videos is sometimes there are agitators who go above and beyond the peaceful protest. And I think what happens there is those are used as an excuse to just start rounding up random people. Most of those who've been those agitators are not the ones that we're talking about that have been arrested, right? We're talking about folks that were just taking part in the protest, right? You've already outlined some of the charges that were, you know, given them. And yeah, and I mean, look, it really is terrible to see that this is the outcome, because you know that as I mentioned, you know, those of us who spend a lot of time in the West, specifically in the United States has the #1 amendment to the Constitution is freedom of speech and assembly, right? And so it gives the ability for you to go out there and peacefully protest to try to make changes. And unfortunately, other countries don't have these kinds of amendments to the Constitution, or they're very limited abilities to do these kinds of things. And so, you know, what will happen is the government will take a heavy-handed approach to punishing these folks in order to deter people from continuing to speak out against the atrocities that are happening. And as you can see, the video clearly stated that the protests began to slow down. One, because people have to go back to their daily lives, and two, because if this is what's going to happen, it does act as a deterrent. So it's really unfortunate, and I do hope to see a change there. You know, the king did say that he was going to make some adjustments and some changes. We will see, and we will continue to follow the story and keep you guys all up to speed as this continues to unfold. Now, with that, we have some headlines from around Africa, and these are the stories from around the continent that we think that you guys should be paying attention to. I think we should just jump right into it. So the first of which is the Kenyan government says citizens are being tricked to fight for Russia. Do you have any thoughts on this story and what's happening here?
I want to know how that's even a thing. Like, I mean, I'm not saying, I mean, where are the facts, you know? Kenya, please. I guess Ruto, please, is all I have. If people are being tricked to fight for Russia, and they'll rather go on get themselves unalived in somebody else's war, what does that say about your leadership? I beg Ruto, okay, a word.
Right. Now on to Ivory Coast. The Ivory Coast president wins their 4th term. His supporters celebrate. There are those who are in neighboring countries who aren't so happy about that. But your thoughts on this story?
Yeah, surprise, surprise, you know. I don't know if you saw the video of the supporters that were celebrating, and they were just so happy for him. I'm like, wow, happy slaves. But anyway, yeah, there's no surprise there. I stand with the people of Cote d'Ivoire.
There it is. Liberia is willing to accept Kilmar Abrego Garcia if he's deported from the United States, according to new documents that was filed in the U.S. federal court. Uganda, Ghana, and Eswatini all previously refused to take him.
You know, this decision by Liberia, given its own historical foundation as a nation settled by freed American slaves, and its continued reliance on the U.S., actually positions it as a reluctant partner in a policy that international human rights organizations have deemed ethically and legally questionable. But I guess they speak good English, so.
Yeah, and for those of you who are unfamiliar, that was the president of Liberia who sat in front of the president of the United States, where he said, you spoke really good English. Were you educated? I think we meant to say, were you educated in the U.S.? I think that's what he was trying to say. But, you know, he's getting a little older, so sometimes he might skip some words, many times. Anyway, yeah, so that is the same president who, and I think it's important to mention that the reason why Uganda, Ghana, and Eswatini are called out is because they have all agreed to take on, you know, migrants from the United States at some point in time, and so they are not willing to take on, you know, Kilmar Abrego Garcia themselves. All right, moving on to the next. Zimbabwe has dismissed comments by U.S. Congressman Gregory Meeks, who warned President of Zimbabwe against extending his tenure beyond constitutional limits.
Yeah, so didn't we talk about this? I think we did, right? The ZANU PF's plan to actually amend the constitution so they can, again, bypass term limits. So now you're having people from outside the continent cautioning you internationally. Of course, we know, I mean, I'm not for whatever the ZANU PF is trying to do in Mnangagwa. I'm not a fan of you're trying to extend to 2030. That's unconstitutional. But I do also agree that the US should please stay out of this. We don't want, I mean, you can speak, but we need a balance. If you're going to condemn somebody who's been unconstitutional, we also need you to condemn leaders throughout the continent who are not doing that which they were appointed to do.
Yeah, I mean, you know, and the West picks and chooses who they're going to support in their extended stays in office and who they're not. So I'll leave it at that. In Uganda, Museveni praises India's diaspora for increasing Uganda's economic growth. Thoughts on that?
Yeah. Well, this is actually historically charged. I think about what happened with Idi Amin in 1972 when he expelled over 60,000 members of the Asian community. So this has actually, I guess this is a way of maybe trying to make it up to them and just have that diplomatic relationship with them. But I mean, thank you, I guess, Museveni, for attempting to be a mouthpiece for the people. But please resign, step down already, and let the people of Uganda get the leaders they deserve. Thank you.
There you have it.
We don't need distractions. Sorry,
yeah, and if you guys are, absolutely, if you guys are interested in that story, just watch The Last King of Scotland to give you a little bit of insight into Idi Amin. I mean, obviously, it's a Hollywood story. It's you know, it's obviously, you know, Hollywood made the movie, but it gives you a little bit of insight into how the world saw Idi Amin at the time that he was in rule of Uganda. All right, so that is the stories that you should pay attention to from around the continent. We have done it again, and we've done it right under an hour. So shout out to us for keeping it there. I want to say to those of you who joined on X, many of you are new to the live stream, and I see you all there. So I want to thank you guys all for joining. Make sure you follow. Gloria, are you on X?
I am on X. The Gloria
okay, so
AO.
Gloria. Okay, so follow the Gloria AO on X as well. If you are watching this live stream, I don't know if you're followers of the platform or not, but follow Authentic Afric on lives on X. Unfortunately, the full name does not fit in too many characters, so it doesn't fit in the name on X. So definitely follow our page, and then also come watch us everywhere else. There's so much other content that you guys might be missing on just by watching on X. So we are on YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, all of the above, TikTok. So come find us on all of those platforms. It's at the Gloria AO, and it's at Authentic African on all platforms. If you haven't already, hit that subscribe button on YouTube. Make sure you share this video with anybody you know who wants to find out what's happening on the continent of Africa. If you haven't already, hit that thumbs up on this video so that the algorithms show it some love. Any final comments before we go?
You're most welcome, Pittsburgh Dude 87. Appreciate your comments and just, you know, you interacting as consistently as you do. We appreciate you. So I'm giving you a special shout out. But thank you all so much for tuning in. Make sure you follow Authentic_African everywhere. This man is doing the thing. But of course on X, it's just Authentic_Afrique. I thought there was a glitch when you stopped at Afrique. I was like, I didn't hear the "and," but yeah. Thank you for emphasizing that.
Yeah, and there is no underscore on X because it's limited characters. So
yeah,
as far as I could get it to. But yeah, but if you search Authentic African on every platform, because some of them are different from others, you'll find it. Instagram, I didn't want to actually have an underscore originally, but I had to because somebody already had Authentic African originally. So with that, follow us on everything. And thank you again, Gloria, for joining the live stream and helping us get through these stories with all of the context and your knowledge. And thank you all for watching this long. So with that, thanks for watching. See you guys all on the next live stream. Bye, guys.
Bye.